seahorses have lived on the earth for around 40 million years. They are truly amazing creatures with an appearance more magical and mythical than real. It's this magical appearance that has captivated humans and is also their greatest downfall. We take an estimated 30 million seahorses from our oceans annually, and these are destined for a variety of markets, including the pet industry, the Asian medicine trade, or just dried curios. Whichever market the seahorses find themselves in, the prognosis isn't good. The pet industry is a worldwide industry, and millions of animals are bought and sold every year, including seahorses. An estimated 90% of those seahorses captured from the wild for pets will die within 6 weeks. This was the motivation to establish the Seahorse Sanctuary, and we began with many years of scientific research. The Seahorse Sanctuary has been commercially breeding seahorses now for pets since the year 2000 and has achieved several world firsts in seahorse breeding in that time. Our seahorses are shipped from Kalbarri Airport to destinations all around Australia. Seahorses bred in captivity have an enormous advantage over wild seahorses in that they are adapted to the tank environment and easy to feed, as we shall see when we take a behind-the-scenes look into the Seahorse Sanctuary. Seahorses are unique in the animal kingdom in being the only animals where the male, not the female, becomes pregnant and gives birth. This is a fact that often appeals to the ladies, but when you consider that the gestation is only 13 to 14 days, male seahorses experience only a few contractions, and they do none of the child rearing, the concept loses some appeal. Male seahorses can have batches of babies numbering anything from 50 to over 1,000 depending on the species. The males hold babies before they're born in a pouch. Our Brazilian seahorse male here is ready to give birth to approximately 500 baby seahorses. He has an opening at the top of the pouch that looks a little like a belly button. Mating seahorses will perform a beautiful courtship dance before mating. Courting seahorses will link tails and swim together before mating. When ready to mate, the seahorses indicate their willingness by a distinctive movement of the head towards the sky. Following the mating dance, the seahorses move close together in the water, facing each other, and swim upwards, when the female will deposit her eggs in the male's pouch. Following egg transfer, the male will fertilise the eggs in his pouch and gestate the babies for approximately 14 days before a few contractions signalling imminent birth. And in a rush, all of the babies are expelled from the pouch. Our Brazilian male has now given birth to a tank full of tiny, fully formed baby seahorses. Once he's put back with his partner, however, he's ready for action almost immediately. The most important part of the Seahorse Sanctuary is the live feeds room, where every day we breed millions of live microscopic plankton for baby seahorses to eat. We begin at the very bottom of the ocean's food chains to grow algae. The large containers of bubbling coloured liquid are the algae that we grow to feed to the zooplankton. You may have heard of algal blooms occurring in our rivers. These are the result of excess nutrients, mainly nitrogen and phosphorus, washing off our lawns into the rivers and providing food for unchecked algal growth. The containers of bubbling liquid are an artificially created algal bloom of beneficial algae. These are the plants that we feed to the microscopic animals or zooplankton. We culture two varieties of algae. New cultures are started by artificially adding the nutrients to grow the algae and then adding a few algal cells so that the new algal cultures are pale in colour to begin with. As the algae grows, it becomes more dense and darker in colour, giving the varying colours of liquid. The green algae can easily be seen underneath the microscope, but is so small that 100 of the cells that you can see moving around are only 1 millimetre long, very small, when compared to a human hair that you can also see. This algae is fed to another animal that we breed called a copepod. Let's add some copepods to our microscope screen so that you can see their size in contrast to the green algae. Copepods are microscopic crustaceans like a crab or a lobster, only incredibly small, and the key to breeding many of the seahorse species that we culture. Copepods form the basis of the food chain of most life in the ocean and are one of the most numerous creatures on Earth. In fact, if you've ever swallowed a mouthful of seawater whilst at the beach, you've probably swallowed some copepods along with it. But don't worry, they're very good food. Each day, the vessels containing breeding copepods are fed with algae and then harvested via a computer cycle of hundreds of thousands of baby copepods that are excellent food for baby seahorses. The copepods we breed are only one of about 15,000 species of copepod in the world, but our research has shown it to be the best and most uniquely suited to aquaculture. The copepod we use is extremely nutritious. We can see from these enlarged photographs the globules of omega-3 oils copepods produce that make them such good food. The big advantage in copepods is that they are so small, with 10 baby copepods being only 1 millimetre in length. This means they can be fed to offspring of species that produce tiny babies. These tiny babies have mouths so small that conventional aquaculture foods are simply too big and won't fit in. So our baby seahorses are fed copepods for the first week or two of life and grow very fast on the good food. They quickly outgrow the tiny copepods though, and the next step is to hatch standard aquaculture food called Artemia or brine shrimp. We hatch 3 to 4 million brine shrimp daily in containers and add a variety of nutrients to make them good food. The newly hatched brine shrimp are much bigger than copepods and become breakfast, lunch and dinner for the seahorses for the next few months of life. Newborn seahorses are exact replicas of their parents and begin swimming away to search for food from the moment they're born. They're collected from the parents and moved carefully to the nursery system when born. They are often so small that hundreds of babies can look like an empty tank. Each of our tanks contain all of the babies from one male on one day, so that each tank is full of brothers and sisters. As soon as they are born, we add live copepods to the water. When born, seahorses will only eat live food and won't learn to eat frozen shrimp until much later. Watch the baby seahorses carefully to see them sucking up the live copepods. After several weeks, they grow large enough to move on to live Artemia. Survival on live plankton can vary from batch to batch, although we aim for and routinely achieve survival rates between 60% and 90%. In the wild, this would be less than 0.01%, as most baby seahorses are eaten by bigger fish. This isn't such a bad thing though, as being part of the food chain, they provide food for other growing fish. After 4 to 6 weeks, the young seahorses are large enough to wean from live food onto defrosted shrimp and go to seahorse school. Over the next few months, their colour will begin to change dramatically. Baby seahorses are dark in colour, but as they grow older, they become paler. And finally develop the ability to change colour, and all of our seahorses, when older, can go a range of colours including bright orange, yellow and pink, as well as a range of other colours to blend in best with the background colour in their tank. The colour a seahorse displays depends very much on the food they eat and the amount and type of light in their tank, as well as the background colour of the tank. The colour of the artificial weed that they are given to hold on to is also important, and they will change colour to some extent in order to hide in it. This ability to change colour helps them to hide from predators in the wild, as it allows them to blend in with their surroundings, and you can see how well it works. Once baby seahorses have reached about 6 weeks of age, the live plankton becomes too small for them to eat, and they need to learn to eat the frozen food that makes them easier to keep as pets. So the next stage in our seahorse's life is seahorse school, where they are taught to eat the frozen food. Seahorse school contains seahorses and pipefish of varying species, ages and sizes in each tank. As they grow older, we teach the seahorses and pipefish 2 important things. The first is what to eat, and the second is who brings food, and that's us. Cultured seahorses learn the lesson quickly. Whilst they continue to eat live plankton, the smaller babies are watching their older brothers and sisters eating defrosted shrimp. So just like people, the younger seahorses learn from the older seahorses. So if you're wondering why your pet cultured seahorse comes over to the side of the tank when you're near, don't be fooled. It's not because your seahorse loves you, he just wants to be fed. The frozen shrimp that we teach our seahorses to eat is readily available in pet shops. Wild seahorses in pet shops, in contrast, are often several years old when caught and only used to eating live, moving food. Teaching them to eat frozen food is an uphill battle, to say the least. Despite their magical appearance, it often surprises people to learn that seahorses are just bony fish, like a herring or a salmon. A pretty strange looking fish, but a fish nevertheless. About 40 million years ago, this fish began to change, and instead of swimming along like other fish, began to swim in an upright position. They have gills for breathing and fins for movement. But are missing the tail fin, which makes them slow swimmers. As a result, seahorses are listed in the Guinness Book of Records as being the slowest fish in the ocean. And this is a big disadvantage when being chased by bigger, hungrier fish. The body of a seahorse is a bit of a mix-up. They have a head that reminds us of a horse, which gives them their name. They have a tail, like a monkey, that is prehensile. They possess a pouch that is reminiscent of a kangaroo's pouch, where babies are held during pregnancy. Their eyes move independently, and so a seahorse can look in 2 different directions at once, just like a chameleon. Although there are 35 seahorse species in the world, at the Seahorse Sanctuary we only breed those that are best suited to being kept as pets. As Australia is a warm country, we breed only tropical species that are used to this climate. These include the Brazilian seahorse, which hails from Brazil, the coral seahorse from the Philippines, and our Australian species, the western spiny seahorse. Other Australian pipefish and shrimp species are also bred as good tank mates for seahorses. All of our species are well suited to being kept as pets. Most Australian seahorse species are cold or temperate water loving and therefore not easy to keep, so we don't breed them. The natural lifespan of a tropical seahorse is about 5 to 6 years. Seahorses can vary in size depending on the species. The size of the 35 different seahorse species can be anything from 2 centimetres up to 35 centimetres. When buying a cultured seahorse, they are about 7 to 8 months old and small, so they can be likened to buying a kitten rather than a cat. They will then grow quickly to an adult size in around about 18 months. Seahorses have no teeth, so they eat by literally sucking up their food, by expanding their gill coverings located where you might imagine their ears to be. This causes a rush of water up their snout, sucking up any food.
We've also got some pipefish in there, and the reason for having pipefish in with the seahorses is because they make good tank mates. They're all very happy together.
The snout is very unique in that it's like a hollow tube, and they virtually have to eat like they're sucking through a straw. So they'll sort of position the end of their mouth right where the food is, and then they'll go, and you'll see the food disappear. It's a very unique way of feeding.
To help care for pet seahorses, it's important to have the right tank mates. Many saltwater fish are simply too aggressive and can harm a seahorse in the same tank. All of the tank mates we breed aren't aggressive towards a seahorse and eat the same food. So we breed 2 species of pipefish, including the banded and Jance's pipefish, that belong in the same family as seahorses and so can be considered close cousins. Neither of these species have ever been successfully bred before. Pipefish have many features in common with a seahorse. They have the same great long feeding snout of a seahorse to suck up food, and the males carry the babies that are held as eggs underneath the body. The young are extremely small when first born. This baby banded pipefish can be seen next to a human hair. Jance's pipefish are even smaller than this when born. Just like cultured seahorses, cultured pipefish also know what to eat and who brings food. Pipefish are also caught from the wild for pets and simply refuse to eat anything that isn't alive, and so they don't survive for long in pet tanks. Another tank mate we also breed is the live-in clean-up crew for pet seahorses, and that's peppermint shrimp. These ornamental shrimp are also collected from the wild for home pet tanks, but by culturing them, we can leave the wild shrimp where they belong. Peppermint shrimp are hermaphrodites, and so both male and female together. The eggs, laid under the tail segment, start out green when newly laid, and as the embryos develop, lighten to a creamy white colour. When they hatch, rather than fully formed shrimp, they begin life as larvae that float in the water, eating and molting their exoskeletons until they're quite large at 4 weeks. During the last molt, they turn into fully formed shrimp and settle to the bottom of the tank. They must grow to a much larger size, however, before flying out with our seahorses to pet shops all over Australia. This is where wild seahorses come from, and it's where they belong. When visiting a pet shop, all of the pets that you're looking at, pretty much all of them these days, they're cultured for us. Dogs, cats, goldfish, all cultured. Saltwater fish, on the other hand, including seahorses, are the last grouping of animals that are captured for us for pets in our own homes. So don't be afraid to ask that question when you go to a pet shop. Where's this pet from? We all have enormous power to make a difference with the consumer choices that we make. So making the choice for a cultured pet is making the choice for conservation. It's a beautiful world, and we can all help to keep it that way.